All right, and I touched on this on the previous slide, but there have been a few studies looking just at pollination of plants and flowers. I'm sorry, I didn't ask you what these animals were, but I think that we all, everyone has a pretty good idea of monarchs, and our fireflies are lightning bugs. There have been quite a few studies looking at the impacts of moths, but at the end of the day, a lot of these studies found the same information, that when there was artificial light in the area, light pollution, there was a reduction in plant pollination because the moths were focused on the light and not going out and feeding. And some of our nighttime pollinators helping to promote the species of these plants. Does anyone recognize this flower from here on the island?
Hollyhock, yeah.
It looks like a hollyhock. It's not the best photo, but it is a yucca, and there's a tiny little yucca moth that is the only species that pollinates this plant. And then this is a squash bee. This isn't a native flower, but if you garden and like to grow squash plants, you are very excited about the presence of this bee. And if you don't have squash in your garden for 1 year, it might be you might have some bright lights near your garden, or unfortunately, you know, with insects, they're not dwindling in numbers just because of light pollution. They have a lot of other factors, pesticides, habitat loss, so they're facing a kind of a layering effect as well. So, in summary, these are some of the points we just highlighted on why should we care, from just altering the daytime, nighttime environment, the circadian rhythm. Artificial lighting can actually be a form of habitat loss. If you have a home in kind of more of a wilderness area, but there's floodlights left on, many species do not use the heavily lit area. So in the daytime, you might think it's a great natural area. Why wouldn't there be a bunch of wildlife here? But it kind of, the light can exclude them from using that environment. We talked about the deer and the headlights kind of making it hard for them to move at night. From fireflies to mammals to bats, reproductive cycles, seasonal events. Concentrating animals is an easy food source. The example of the moths and the bats coming to a street light, and then again the relationship between the insects and plant pollination. Does anyone recognize this moth? Luna moth and a bat, and this is an eastern red bat. This is one of our bats that we identified here on Dewees Island during our bat survey over the summer. So how can you help? As I mentioned earlier on, light pollution is something it's pretty easy, and it doesn't really take a lot of money or a lot of effort. Sometimes it's just changing out a few light bulbs versus, you know, a whole big retrofit that may cost thousands of dollars. But some of the kind of main points is using light only where and when you need it. And the next slide will go on. I'll share with you about the warm amber or red color lights. And this is a retrofit, not here on Dewees. This was down in Florida, but you can just see changing out a few of the exterior lights, how it made a difference. And we'll talk about the light spectrum and how animals perceive light on the next few slides. And some of those of you in the audience have tried out some of these retrofits as well in your home. Motion triggered lights for safety, reflectors along driveway, properly shield all the lights, and if you're not quite sure what that means, I have a slide to share with you. And then keeping light indoors is incredibly helpful as well. That can be closing blinds and curtains, just moving that lamp that sets right near your window to kind of the other end of the couch, so you still get light in your room, but it's, you know, further away from the window, so there's less light trespass going out the window. Or, you know, having one lamp in your home that might have that bright white task light, and then another lamp that you might turn on in the evening with that warm light that kind of makes a nice cozy setting anyway. And then using red color flashlights when you're out on the beach or out in the environment at night. So individual decisions do add up to make a big impact across the landscape. And some components of wildlife-friendly lighting, whether you're on the front beach or really anywhere, and it can also include principles for neighbor-friendly lighting as well. But keeping it low as possible for the intended purpose. Shielding it, that means you don't want to ever see the bulb or the globe shielded all the way down so the light's not coming out from the side or going up into the sky to create sky glow. And this cuts down on the amount of visible light to wildlife, and then keeping it long, and that's the kind of the wavelength, and I have the next slide I'll share with that a little bit longer or in a bit more detail, but that the longer the wavelength, the light is visibly dimmer to wildlife that primarily use their rods for vision. And how that is perceived by our eyes is the kind of the amber and red light bulbs that you see out and about. Lights with shorter wavelength are going to be kind of those bright task light that you want in your work area, your shop, that sort of thing. But it can also appear similar to the light that's emitted by the ocean, and this is why animals get confused and go the wrong way. Sea turtles, instead of going to the ocean, they go to the bright white light because it looks similar the way they're perceiving it.